the statistic right now, less than 10% of the value of coffee remains in coffee-producing countries. I'm the founder of Kahawa 1893 Coffee, which I founded with a mission to empower women farmers in Africa.
Hi, Mark.
Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Mark.
Hey, Mark Hallie.
The Mark Hallie Show.
How did you do it and why? Hey, and welcome to the Mark Hallie Show. And today I'm really psyched for our guest. She's Maggie Nyamumbo. She is the founder of a company called Kahawa 1893 Coffee. The mission here is to help Kenyan women improve their lives. And I think that's really cool. So, Maggie, why don't you tell us a little bit about just the origin? You know, what was it that sparked you to do this?
Thanks, Mark, for having me on the show. My name is Margaret Nyamumbo, and I'm the founder of Kahawa 1893 Coffee, which I founded with a mission to empower women farmers in Africa. This is based on my own personal experience growing up on a coffee farm in Kenya. So I grew up on my grandfather's coffee farm in Kenya. And what I observed was that a lot of the labor, up to 90% of the labor in coffee, came from women, but they didn't always get compensated or get recognized. So the coffee industry is very male-dominated on the trading side, on the roasting side. So when I immigrated to the United States and got a chance to build a business, I really wanted to build something that would give back. And I chose this mission of empowering women because I had personal experience with it. And I wanted to be able to find a way to include women who are doing a lot of the work in the industry and don't always get the recognition.
Now, you managed to get yourself from Kenya to the United States, and then you got an MBA at Harvard. Now, that's no small tasks for a young lady coming out of Kenya.
Oh, yeah, it wasn't a straightforward journey. I think when I set out to leave Kenya to come first, came for my undergrad, I didn't, envision what would unfold. So I did my undergraduate and I got a chance to get my MBA from Harvard. After that, started out my career on Wall Street. And because I'd grown up on a coffee firm and because for the longest time, coffee farming is not the most lucrative activity.
it's
So
not.
farmers don't make a lot of money. So my parents' goal was to send me abroad to get the best education I could get, which I did, and to get an office job. And so when I turned around and told them that I had decided to essentially pursue something that I was supposed to be running away from.
Let's go into debt.
So that was a big surprise for them, for me. But it's been such an incredible journey. So I'm still building, but it's just been amazing to be able to give back to this community. And one fun fact: so when I got a chance to study abroad, and I got my scholarship to study abroad, my community rallied, behind me. They bought me a ticket to come, and so it's been, for me, I feel like I owe my community this debt that I wanted to give back to them beyond just like regular support.
Well, that must have been, just imagine a whole community putting up the money. That's almost tear-jerking, and not if tear-jerking. And, well, you do owe them back in your heart and the like. I happened to look up your hometown. I think it was Kisi. Is that it? Is that the name of it?
Yes. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
So I
Yeah.
looked at it. I guess a population of about 100,000 people, a lot of poverty, a lot of crime, and so I could see the reason for just wanting to help, and so you get over here, and now you go to Harvard MBA, and you're a rich chick hanging out in Wall Street. Which is, kind of, and the fancy pants, and you're banging around in that world. And I know that's fast paced and can be really, really a grinding affair, but also well compensated. And then you say, this thing clicks in your mind. I'm quitting my job and I'm going to do this thing that I have no idea if it's going to succeed or not. What forced that for you?
It was just like a moment in time where, as you mentioned, I had a thriving career, in an industry that I'd worked obviously really hard to get to. It's very difficult. obviously to get a spot and have a trajectory towards getting to the top of the industry. So I had this spot that was very coveted, that I chose to kind of get out of line and build something. But to me, I actually used to cover consumer goods. So that was an
Uh-huh.
industry that I used to essentially specialize in. And it was during that process that I get to learn a lot about brands, actually, and how they got built. And I learned some of the origin stories of large household names right now, and realized they also had sometimes very humble beginnings. So in a garage, really, really like unexpected, small town, or small
Yeah.
resource
Yeah.
beginnings. And then that made me realize that there really wasn't a big you didn't need something big to start. And so it did give me that encouragement to be able to kind of take all the resources that I had, as you mentioned, just I think being part of that community, having this amazing network that I'd built over time, and some of the money that I had saved. So I had some seed money based on sort of the savings that I had. I had a network. I had a good education, so I knew that if it failed, I could always fall back into the job
Yeah.
market.
Yeah.
So I felt that I had this, and I was actually turning 30. I tell people this. I was on the cusp of turning 30. And one thing about when you're in your 20s, and Mark, I don't know what you think about 20s now, but when you're in your 20s, it's actually a very interesting time because sometimes you feel really old. You feel like, and then like, but at the same point, like you're so young. So
Oh
when you're
my
in your
Lord,
20s,
you're a baby.
I know. But then I don't know if Bridget is around, but when you're in your 20s, you feel like you're running out of time, which in hindsight, it's like, oh my God, there was like nothing to run towards. Like life is so much more. So I remember I was 29, I was about to turn 30. And to me, 30s was such a big age. It was
Oh,
one
you're
of those
getting
age.
old. Now you're ready to put to pasture.
Yeah, it was like you're getting old. And like for me, 30s, like when I was in my 20s, I viewed people in their 30s as people that had figured out life, right? You know everything, you have it all together. And so I really wanted to take this risk and try and build something before I got into my 30s. That way, if it didn't work out, I had an opportunity to have another
Sure.
start
Sure.
over. So it was also just like a timing thing in terms of kind of where I was at in my life.
Have you ever heard the saying that there's no really good reason to do something entrepreneurial? It's because, and I felt this too as a in my mid 30s, that
Yeah.
the only reason someone does it is because they believe there is no other choice. That in their life, that's it. That it's almost like in your heart you're being pulled, and that won't go away. I'm a believer that I've seen people do it, and it just will not go away. It's like a ghost within you. And that happened to me. I happen to have gotten out of alcohol and drug rehab when I was 26, and that drove me. With that in mind, you select specialty coffee, and obviously that's because of your family. But I'm sure you were able to look at the landscape and see that's no easy task.
Yeah, and so now knowing what I know about the industry, in hindsight, I'm very, very surprised that I picked it because, as you know, it's a very competitive industry, and that was something that people told me at the beginning. They're like, "Oh my God, coffee is a no-go zone. It's like very crowded. Where would you pick coffee?" And so for me, it wasn't that I picked coffee, but coffee picked me. I wasn't
Yeah.
trying to be an entrepreneur just to be an entrepreneur. I was trying to do something very specific. And so I didn't see, to me, coffee wasn't an industry that picked to build something, and it was an industry that I needed to build something in. And specialty coffee at the time, I mean, I think now we're almost in a new era of coffee, and we can talk about that, kind of what that new era looks like. But, as you know, we went from sort of like the 80s of standardization, and then 90s is when we started to see this like specialty coffee really take off. And so when we think about, 2000, 2010, that was about 20 years after specialty coffee had been around and was starting to sort of mature.
Yeah,
And
for
so
sure.
it was sort of somewhat of a maturing industry, and it was starting to kind of attract disruption, if you may.
That is roughly where you came stumbling in,
Yeah.
and that's a cool time. It allows some differentiation.
No, so and that's I think give us, an entry point into specialty coffee is now mature. People are really kind of used to this idea of like high quality coffee. People were, getting comfortable with paying $5 a cup of coffee, which I know is not a small feat, going from, people getting used to their $1 diner cup to like now really getting comfortable with enjoying specialty coffee and being able to pay for it. So I felt like the industry were at a place where they had accepted specialty coffee, and I really wanted to introduce this idea of now that we're like comfortable paying these prices for coffee, how can we bring some of that equity back to the farmers? Because the market is still sort of based on the old idea of trading, that a lot of the trading has the value is on the roasting side. And so farmers still face a lot of volatility. So thinking about how can we bring a lot of this value that we're capturing, how can we bring some of that value back to the farmers? So, and the statistic right now, it's less than 10% of the value of coffee remains in coffee producing countries.
Hmm.
So that's been the statistic really, for a long time, and I think still today, probably less now,
Mm-hmm.
because the value is increasing in the roasting side, but still very low on the sourcing side. And so traditionally, I think fair trade system is the most famous way that conscious consumers were able
Yeah,
to give back, right? So you would pay an extra dollar or two on a bag, and some of that money would through the fair trade organization be funneled back to the farming cooperatives.
sure,
And
sure.
so what I thought about, how can I bring in some new innovation into this industry? And I came up with this idea of a QR code. And actually, I was able to grab a bag. I don't know if you can see this, but
Yeah, I love the design, by the way. As a guy, I'm like, hey, I love that. That's really cool. Very complex to have the different colors in the gussets, by the way.
oh
But
yeah,
anyway,
yeah. And by the way, the whole if on a flat base, it's based on the Serengeti. So I wanted to show you the QR code,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
which is what we came up with as an idea to essentially make it easy for consumers to be able to give back directly. So instead of funneling the money through a third or another middleman and hope it funnels back. This provided a direct way to be able to give back to farmers. And obviously this is enabled now because we have new technologies, right? So we
Sure.
have mobile money, so people can receive money, small dollar cross-border transfers are now more efficient. So think about how traditionally sending money abroad is such a, it's a task. You have to go to a bank and
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it costs $45 to send a wire
Yeah,
abroad. So
everybody's
like
in on it. Everybody's picking away at it, you know.
but now there's actually there's mobile money, there's crypto, there's ways to do this sort of borderless transactions. And so we were able to actually really experiment with that at the very beginning and figure out how can we get consumers to essentially give back seamlessly as they consume their coffee in the
Mhm.
morning. So we drink a cup of coffee every day. How can we use that moment in the morning to be able to have impact directly?
Yeah,
So that
catch them.
was
You
really,
got them. You've got them on.
yeah.
Now, but having been around it a lot, there's two things that are extremely challenging, which some people may not know. There's roasting coffee, which in and of itself is a um, very trained thing, and it's not easy to do. And then you also have to become, I think, the equivalent of a sommelier in coffee,
Yeah.
cupping and all that, which I've played around with. But so how did you embark on that?
So I actually, I remember when I kind of had this idea, I Googled,
Mm-hmm.
I
Well, it's a
like
good
literally
thing.
Googled coffee roasting. I was in New York at the time. I'm still in New York now, but I was in New York. So I Googled coffee roasting, and then a bunch of results came up. And then this one guy caught my eye. And I just emailed him and I said, "Oh, hi, I'm interested in roasting coffee. I would like to learn more." They messaged me back and
Oh
said,
my gosh, what
"Oh."
are you going to do?
I was like, "Oh, wow." They messaged me back and they're like, "Oh yeah, like, come, this is where the roastery location is." It was in Brooklyn. So then I went in and then I was like, I'm interested in, told him I have a farm back home, like I'm interested in learning about coffee. And then he, had been he was an industry veteran, had been around for a long time. And when I told him kind of what I was thinking about doing, he was really interested. So Chris basically took me under his wing and became my mentor. That's how I got started. He's the one that told me where to buy bags, where to buy stickers. He taught me how to cup. He taught me how to. So I got samples sent from home, and then we just roasted them at the roastery. He taught me how to cup. He taught me how to roast and like cup the coffee. So really, that's how it was. And actually, I have to credit Chris for encouraging me to start a brand, because initially, what I was gonna do was I was just gonna import green coffee and sell to roasters.
Mm,
But Chris told me that he thought that it was important that I tell my own stories directly,
of
because
course.
what was happening in the industry was it was a lot of like farmer stories being told through other roasters, but there wasn't a voice of someone who was from a coffee growing family, and especially from Africa,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
there wasn't an African brand in the market. And so I have to credit Chris for really encouraging me and
So
telling me all
so
the little
so
things.
now
Yeah.
now you have a call. Okay, so now I got a product. I'm playing around with it, and it kind of to pivot a little bit here. Number one, have you ever heard of the American Cup of Excellence, which is called the Gold Cup?
Yes.
Okay, because I participated in that, and
Oh, okay.
the ridiculous costs. 80, $90 a pound. When
Oh,
I
yeah,
went to
yeah.
one of the auctions, and I'm like, what? But
Yeah.
you can't. But anyway, enough with that.
Mhm.
You all of a sudden this brand's been developed, and now you're getting on CNBC, you're getting on Today, and then you're in Shark Tank. And I watched all of them, and I'm like, I want this girl to be working for me. I want her selling bags. I mean, she is getting it on. And you just you went for gusto. And how do you gain, it's not easy. How do you gain entrance to that? I mean, that's fascinating.
I mean, honestly, I think it's just storytelling, right? I felt like this was such a powerful mission that I wanted people to be aware of. And so, if you could believe it, I actually don't like public speaking.
Yeah. Well,
I
you
used
don't
to be, I
sound
used
that
to be,
way.
I used to be terrified of it. I used to be one of those, never raises their hands in class or talks. But it's one of those things that when you have, and this is something about women, when you have something that is going to impact people, is going to help people, that becomes what pushes you to overcome your fears. So it
Sure.
really was kind of, I had this mission. I knew that for it to be successful, we had to get the word out, we had to get the support we needed. And I'm very passionate about it.
Yeah, I
So
could
when I
tell.
talk about it, when I talk about it, people do believe it. And so I think that's been part of it. It's like the story is very authentic. I love telling it. I love sharing our mission. And so to me, it comes really easy, and I'm so happy that people have been able to get behind us
Hmm.
and really support us. And I was actually drinking from one of our mags, which says the revolution will be brewed, and that was really our
I love that.
I know, that was like our like kind of motto at the time, which is like we really wanted to brew change in the coffee industry. And so yeah, I'm just passionate about it.
Well, you should obviously you should market that to some extent. That's a beautiful saying, and
Yeah,
I
I
think
have
that
it.
carries weight. It carries good weight. But I am a believer that you can. The only thing that can make you sell well is if it's in your stomach as opposed to in your head. Now, I would love to hear. I mean, I watched the Shark Tank, and that's got to be scary and at the same time wildly educational. So just real quickly, what's the process? What do you do? Just I guess you got to win a couple pre things, and then I don't know, get on the show.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's complicated, but also not. it's just a form that you fill out on the website. So they have a casting website, and it's not something I considered, honestly, because as I mentioned, I don't really do public pitching competitions. I'm terrified of public speaking. So something I considered, but a friend of mine had gone on it the prior year, and then she mentioned to me that you should consider it. For a long time, I really didn't. But when you're in entrepreneurship, you have one of those days, and you're like, oh, actually, I should probably do that. I'm
Yeah,
having
I'm going to
such
do it.
a
I'm going to do it. I'm going.
you have one of those days that you're like, okay, what's the worst that could happen, right? It's really a 2-minute form that you fill out on the website. But they also do their own sort of outreach
Hmm.
to entrepreneurs. But I just happened to just fill out a form, and then I had back from them and started the whole process. It's a long process, many months of being interviewed. I mean, I think they start with like 10 or 20,000 people, and then they drill it down to less than
Wow.
100.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's an elimination type of. It's like a reality show. It's like start
Well, it
big, and
is a
then you keep.
reality show. I
It
mean,
is
in
a
the
reality
end,
show.
so I
Yeah.
was watching you, go through it. And I was like, okay, she's got to be getting spooked, and they're throwing things at you. And then you get into the negotiation for values, equity, debt. I know about that stuff. And I'm watching you and I'm thinking, okay, is she gonna, fold, and you didn't. Just that anybody knows, they wanted what, 25 and 12 and a half,
Yeah.
12 and a half, and then you were throwing 8 at them. And then it ended up, I think, with $350,000, but chopped up between cash and equity. That's what I remember.
So we actually
Maybe,
ended up. I ended up because I remember at one point it was like 3 of them wanting to be in, but that would have been too much equity, more than I
yeah.
wanted to give away. So we ended up going with a cash only. So the shark that I went with, who was a guest shark at the time, Emma, she just did not want debt. She just wanted equity. So we ended up doing a straight up equity deal. But I was kind of also weighing debt. But in hindsight, equity is clean. It's working. So yeah, I'm happy that I made that choice.
Yeah, it can be a noose around your neck
Yeah.
sometimes with equity. I know for me, I fought hard not to give up equity. I just wanted debt, but it was nasty interest rate. But I thought,
Ooh.
well, if I can, 16%.
Oh my God. I mean,
Yeah.
for that time, that's a lot.
Well,
But even
and
today.
you're low risk. I mean, you're high risk. It's going to fail. I mean, anybody looking at it, there's no assets behind it.
Yeah.
But projections and everything, we paid it off. So that's focusing on people like you.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm in the specialty trade, so I know everything that you are battling and fighting.
Yeah.
But in the end, what you have some pretty lofty projections.
Yeah, and actually, before when we moved to projections, one thing I wanted to mention about one of the reasons I think our dark roast is very popular is because African coffees. I don't know if you know about this.
No,
They're denser beans. So coffee beans have different densities,
sure,
and
yes, I do.
so especially Kenyan coffees, Ethiopian
Hmm.
coffees, they're grown at such high altitudes in this kind of extreme weather. So Kenya is on the equator, but it also has a mountain. So you have this
Hmm.
very hot days and then very cold nights. So the coffee trees are really stressed. So the coffee beans are very dense, which means when you roast them dark, you can go really dark because roasting is like baking. You can go really
Yeah,
dark without burning them. So then you
yeah.
get this very bold coffee that's not bitter. So it's one
Hmm.
of the like really cool reasons that I think I became a fan of our dark roast, just because you get this like bold roasty coffee, but it's not bitter or burnt
Yeah,
at all.
my
But yeah.
my wife loves dark, so I grabbed 2 of your bags yesterday, and then I bought your coffee pods because I was thinking, now I wonder how she's going to translate that into a coffee pod because maintaining the palate and moving it through a Keurig is in itself no simple task.
Yeah, no. I honestly, when we got approached to do them, the K cups, initially, I was skeptical, right? I was like, we're specialty coffee. This is not going to translate. But what we saw was that their innovation is getting better. So they have newer age machines that
Hmm.
have multiple needles. So the first gen
Yeah,
machine
yeah.
was only one piercing.
Yep.
And that didn't do good distribution of water, right? So their new gen machines have like multiple piercings. So they actually have a better brewing process going.
Yeah.
And then we're able to, so with them, we give them our coffees, we give them our specs. So we're very impressed that they were able to reproduce our specs, and the coffee's brewing really well. And I think one other thing that we had, which is an issue around sustainability, and they are actually working on non-plastic.
Yeah. I
I don't
know.
know
I
if
know
you've
it.
seen it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
The one person just came out and they got shot down. They had what they called. It's just been in the news, and of course, I'm still a coffee geek. So I read it, and I'm like, oh my god! And it failed. But they're going to get there. They're going to get there. That's no question.
I saw the prototypes. So basically they look like a piece of like brown. So basically there's no cover on it. You just put it on and it brews and dissolves, which is the future, really, right? It's like it just dissolves.
That's just going to happen.
Yeah. So that was, I think for us, it was kind of, we wanted to bring our coffee to a larger audience. And actually, when I started, I remember, again, because of specialty coffee, and because if you remember back, specialty coffee was very snobbish.
Oh,
it was
still is.
Still
Yeah. We are supposed to look down our nose at curing. It's just part of our job. Oh dear. Even the mention of it, we would be offended. But it's convenient. It's convenient.
It is. Yeah. And so for us, I wanted to bridge that gap of like people that wanted to support our mission and drink coffee, but wanted that convenience. Because for us, it was really about, we want you to enjoy our coffee in the format that works best for you. So that's really what our goal is. It's about like, we don't want to gatekeep how you drink your coffee, and also actually,
once again, go float with the market.
Flow with the market.
I've noticed in my business, just let it take you. It's almost like like a river, and there's little rocks, and if you let yourself just get all worried about the rock, no, just move around it. They'll tell you. They will tell you. So focusing back on the giving back, you mentioned that there is a gifting mechanism. There's a 15%. I think you said there's a match, and then obviously someone can get on and gift. So I know what you're saying, but why don't you just clarify that a little bit?
Yeah. So basically, on the back of our bag, I mentioned there's a QR code that you can scan and tip the farmers. And so right now we're set up in 3 countries. So Kenya, Rwanda, and Ethiopia. And on the website, when you go to the landing page, you're able to pick which country you want to send and what amount you want to send to. And we do have kind of single origins for all those countries. And then we actually use them in the blends as well. And so our blends will use the same origins because we recognize people prefer blends, right? Sometimes people just want something more balanced. So we mix them up. But then they come from these 3 countries as well. And then, so that money goes into a pot. Or I guess in this case, 3 different pots, so different countries.
Sure. Well,
and it's actually a practice called table banking that inspired this practice. So table banking is the most common way that women in Kenya and in Africa generally are bank themselves. So because women don't have access to land or don't have access to banking generally.
Lovely.
So the way that they access credit or access kind of a larger pool of money that you need to invest in something is they essentially get into groups of 30 to 50, and they sit around a table, and then each of them put small amounts of money into a jar basically, and then let's say everyone puts in $5, right? 50 people. Now you have $200 that you can give to one person so that they can invest in something that they need to invest in, and then they repay the money. That money goes to the next person, so it goes around the table, called table banking. So initially I thought, oh my god, what if we could add money to that pot?
Why not?
Instead of being 250, what if it was 1,000, and then now we could lend to 4 people all at once, right? So that was really the idea behind it, and it evolved into this goal of like getting money back to the communities. And then these women, and we don't even dictate exactly what they want to do with it. So For example, in Kenya, the women have invested in, a maize meal processing plant.
Yeah,
So maize meal is the most common food there. So they're able to build something that's closer to them. So instead of walking many miles to go get
yeah.
processed, so they have that. They've also invested in a scholarship program for the
Cool.
young girls, because what was happening was when girls fall out of school, even for one day, they fall behind. They never go back. As soon as you miss one day of school, your risk of returning, kind of falls, right? And these girls were sometimes being sent home for something as small as $5 or less. So the community was, okay, why don't we really invest in this, in the women, in the future women, these young girls in the community. So that scholarship fund makes sure that this young kids have everything they need, and it's not just school fees. We're talking a bar of soap at home, uniform, textbooks,
It's a
things
lot
you
of
don't
money.
really, things that you don't really think about. Shoes. How's someone going to go to school, right? So just making sure that they have the basic needs to go to school, and keep them in school. So that's one of the most exciting. And I was actually back home last year, and I got to be a part of this, one of this sort of ceremonies where they were giving all this to the kids. It was amazing. We have some of that footage on our website as well.
Oh,
And
great.
then in Rwanda, one of their ways that they like to invest is buying goats. So the women will buy goats because goats are assets.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
produce milk, they produce other goats. So they're income generating assets. So
Sure,
that's
sure.
how they like to invest their money. And then in Congo, unfortunately, Congo has been war torn for a while. Actually,
Oh,
even
yeah.
right now, there's a war currently. And so the money has been kind of gone towards rebuilding and like helping crisis management. So that's kind of the breadth of the work that we've been a part of and are supporting on the ground.
There's a not that I don't know if you're a historian. There's a book called The Race for Africa, which is a whole European insight into how this ungodly race went on to grab everything up. And, and in that time, I don't think anybody who wasn't part of that crowd was really getting in on the game, and also being in a male dominated society. So yeah, I'm sure these little girls are just getting, screwed right, left, and in between. So now let's talk about the business. We're going to try, I think, being a Harvard MBA, that the concept might be to make a profit.
Yes.
Just thinking. If not,
Yes.
we should cut the interview short. But
Yes.
so you have to roast X. Just tell us about your projections, what you're doing now, where you see it's going.
Are you talking actual revenues?
Yeah. Just where's the business moving? What are you doing now? What are your projections?
Yeah. So right now we are at a 5 million level, I would say. But
Great.
we're mostly wholesale. So as you know, that's basically 10 million retail, right? So we sell it at half wholesale. So just to give it a scale, I know it can seem small, but that's a lot of coffee, right? That's a lot of
a whole
containers. So I'd say right now we're like about 5 million. We've traditionally invested, that's up to last year, we've traditionally invested in the grocery side. So we were in Trader Joe's. We became the first Black woman-owned coffee brand to launch in Trader Joe's. And we were in Sprouts and other sort of national chains. And in the last year, we've really started focusing on e-commerce. So on our
for sure.
website, direct to consumer. And I'm really passionate about that sector now because originally I thought it was an expensive channel to ship, because I just thought it was so inefficient to ship one bag of coffee.
Yeah,
Sometimes it
go
costs
ahead.
more than the coffee.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But what I've found is that we found a way where we can have people buy more coffee at once, so they're buying in bulk. So then it makes sense. People are buying for 2 or 3 months worth. So then it makes sense to ship it, and also it gives us this direct connection. We're able to keep it fresh. So I'm very, very passionate now about building our direct to consumer. We can storytell more, build more products, move quicker. And we're also, looking to be able to launch more products. And so we're projecting, I mean, we're, 5 million, we're projecting, to hit 10, 20 million in the next few years.
Good for you.
So that's what we were hoping for. But, I think, and, like I said, we'll have a side convo, but we're growing. I mean, the industry requires a lot. There's a lot of wisdom required. It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see the old guys and they know some stuff, and, the youngins will go, no, 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 no. And, they'll be just like, bullshit. This is the way you do it. But let me get back to the final question. I just want to reiterate, if you would tell us again, your mission.
I'm the founder of Kahawa 1893. We are a specialty coffee company with the mission of empowering women producers in Africa. We source directly from women farmers and give back to support them. We have a QR code on the back of our bag that you can scan and tip farmers directly. And this goes into a fund that women in communities in Kenya, Congo, Rwanda are able to invest directly in their communities. So it's a way that you can enjoy delicious coffee and actually have impact in coffee growing communities as well.
Well, thank you so much. And wow, I wish you the best of luck. I'll be watching. I will be watching.
Thank you.
Cheering for you. Okay.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to The Mark Halley Show. If you found this story as intriguing as we did, give us a like, share the episode, and subscribe at The Mark Halley Show. New episodes every other Friday. Adios.